This week's video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build your perfect website. One of the questions I'm asked most is what camera settings do I use for the majority of the work that I do? And I guess the truth of the matter is it's going to depend on the scene that I've got in front of me and the creative effect that I'm trying to achieve. But I do have three go-to setups that I have programmed into my camera that I'm going to share with you throughout the video. And these help me to quickly capture a photo when I need to. The three settings are my tripod setup, my hand holding setup and my action setup. And the last one in particular, I think every photographer should have set up on their camera. I'm also going to share with you a neat little trick that will allow you to get to this setting really quickly should something amazing happen and you're not quite ready for it. So yeah, let's get into the video. So before we get onto the settings, I just wanted to quickly talk about how to store these settings so you can access them quickly. Now, my camera has custom slots on the top dial, and in fact it has 7, and this gives me the opportunity to save a bunch of settings to each individual slot. Now, many cameras have this feature, but some won't. Some won't have a dedicated dial like mine does. Some will be in the menu section, so be sure to look in your menu if you don't have a dedicated dial. Now, the settings I'm going to be talking about today can be applied to most cameras, so this video isn't necessarily a camera brand specific video. It's more about the settings that I use and how you can save them so you can access them quickly. So the walk we're doing today is a bit of a coastal walk with lots of wildlife opportunities, hopefully, fingers crossed. Now, we've got quite a few bird species that sort of live in this area. We've got curlew, oyster catchers, shelduck, egret, amongst a lot of others as well. So I'm hoping to get a few opportunities. Maybe we can capture a few wildlife photos today. And you never know, we may even get a nice golden hour as well. There's lots of bright sunshine about right now, so who knows, fingers crossed, we may even make a landscape shot or two a bit later as well. But let's talk about the first setting. So the first of the 3 modes I currently have set up on my camera is my tripod mode. And I'll use this setup when I have my camera on my tripod, shooting landscapes mainly. And I have this saved to custom slot 7 on the top dial. Now, my tripod mode settings are manual, so this means I'm in complete control of my aperture, shutter speed and my ISO. And my shutter speed is set to 1/100th of a second at f8, and my ISO is its base ISO 125. Now, these settings are just a starting point, and I'll change these depending on the light and the composition that I'm shooting at the time. Now, when I'm in this tripod mode, I like to use manual focus because I like to be in control of my focus. But I do have my back button, AF on button activated, meaning I can move my focus point around and use that to acquire focus if I need to. I'm in single shot mode, meaning when I press the shutter button, only one photo is taken, and I have my IBIS or image stabilization turned off and my 2-second timer turned on. So when I'm on the tripod, the 2-second timer will help to reduce any camera shake. I also have my shutter set to mechanical, but with electronic front curtain enabled. And this helps to reduce any vibration when the shutter is fired, and it works great for my camera for outdoor static shots like landscapes. My white balance is also set to auto. So the next mode I have set up is my hand holding mode, which again I use for my outdoor photography. And this is set to custom slot 6, so I can quickly switch between tripod and hand holding mode with just one click. Now, my hand holding mode is almost identical to my tripod mode, but I just have a couple of tweaks that I tweak to make sure things work well. So everything is the same as before, but this time I have my 2-second timer turned off, and my drive mode is set to continuous low at 3 frames per second, and I have my IBIS turned on. So because I'm shooting handheld, the in-body image stabilization will help me to get sharper photos at slower shutter speeds. But the reason I have my drive mode set to continuous low is that sometimes I like to shoot at 1/4 or 1/3 of a second, and at those speeds I'm getting less consistent results in terms of camera shape. So by taking 3 frames in quick succession, it improves my chances of getting a sharp image. So this mode really suits landscapes or static objects, but when I'm shooting, say, fast moving subjects like birds in flight, my next mode comes into play, which is really handy, and it's my action mode, which we'll get onto in just a second. So we've got a bit of a boardwalk here, and this little river estuary here is obviously tidal, so we've got to be a little bit careful because I think we've only got a small window of opportunity, otherwise we have to walk way out onto the road and come back around, which would be an absolute nightmare. So I think we've got maybe 2 hours either side of low tide before this gets completely cut off. Now I've just seen a couple of birds that I would have liked to have shot, but as soon as I've walked down this quite noisy gravel sort of shingle beach area, they've just flown away. We'll keep trying, we'll keep our eyes open and see what presents itself. I'm sure once we get a bit further down the trail, something will happen. Before we get on to my action setting, I'd just like to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. So I've been using Squarespace for many years to create my website, and the whole process has been really enjoyable and very, very straightforward. They offer a wide selection of award-winning templates that can help you create your website quickly, or you can take a look at their AI design technology for a more unique look. One of the things I love most is how simple it is to create a gallery of photos. You simply drag and drop your photos and choose the gallery style that best suits your work. Also, your web pages will be automatically optimized for search engines, so you can ensure that your photos or your blog posts get as much visibility as possible. So be sure to check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Ian Worth to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And a big thanks to Squarespace for continuing to support the channel. So my next setup is my action mode, and I use this when I'm shooting moving wildlife, but this could be, this could be tweaked to kind of any genre like pets or sports, for example. So I've got this saved to custom slot 1, and there's a very important reason why it's saved to slot 1, which I'll explain in just a bit. But let's walk through these settings first. So my focus is set to continuous autofocus, and I select a zone with 9 focus points. And I can move this zone around with the D-pad to aid composition. By default, I have my bird subject detection setting turned on, so the autofocus detects birds automatically, but I'll change this if I'm shooting something else like my dogs, for example. My drive mode is set to continuous high, shooting at 10 frames per second, as this gives me more chance of nailing a shot. Now, I'm shooting in manual mode with auto ISO enabled. My aperture is set to f2.8, or the lowest aperture that my chosen lens has. My shutter speed is to 2,000th of a second. My ISO will be whatever it needs to be to gain the correct exposure. I can then brighten or darken the image using the exposure compensation dial, which is set to the front dial. IBIS is turned on, but there is an argument to say that at these shutter speeds, like 1/2000th of a second, or higher, it's maybe not needed, but yeah, I leave it on. So these settings should give me the best opportunity to capture fast moving action. Now, as mentioned, there's a reason that these settings are saved to slot 1, which we'll get onto in just a second. So I decided to get the camera out of the bag, so I've got it in my hand, got the long lens on and my action mode set, so I'm ready to shoot with a flick of a switch, because I think maybe I could have captured the curlew back there if I was set up and ready. So I wasn't quite set up, but I just thought I'd spin you around and show you where the state of the tide is at the minute. So you can see it's way down there, so we've got literally all of this section here which needs to flood out before that boardwalk is completely flooded by the tide. So I think we've got plenty of time. I think probably what will happen is we'll lose the light before the tide beats us. So we're not far from the winter solstice now, so we're only going to get probably 2 or 3 hours of light this afternoon before light dips down behind the horizon there, and makes it quite difficult for us, especially when shooting wildlife. So I've been sat here on these dry pebbles for about 2 hours now, thoroughly enjoying myself, but I've not really got anything I don't think that I'm that happy with. I've had a few birds fly by, but most of the action's been right over there on the far bank, and I haven't been able to reach that with the 70-300 lens that I've got. I've taken a few shots of a snowy egret, I think it was, which was wandering around on the embankment there. Again, I think too far away for me to really make it count on this lens. This lens isn't that sharp at 300mm, so yeah, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it anyway, and that's been the main thing, just taking a bit of time out, chilling out and just watching the wildlife. I think maybe if I had, say, a 500mm lens, I'd probably been able to get some decent shots of the birds over there. And what I've found here, because these pebbles are so noisy, every time you move around, the birds just fly. So you have to be, yeah, I think really the best bet is to, position yourself somewhere and hope something kind of flies within your range. But yeah, I'm no wildlife expert, I have to say, but I do thoroughly enjoy dabbling in it now and again, and I would absolutely love a dedicated wildlife lens. Maybe that's something for the future. So you may remember that my action setting is set to custom slot 1, and the reason I did this is because there's a function on my camera that is called recall settings from custom 1, and you can assign this to a function button. And what this allows you to do is when you press the said button, it will change all of your current settings to the settings that are saved in slot 1. Essentially, it stops me having to turn the dial, meaning I can get to those settings really fast. See here, I'm in my usual handheld mode. By pressing this function button, it instantly changes my settings to the action setting. Meaning if all of a sudden I see a bird that I want to shoot, I can press the function button and take the shot, which hopefully let me capture that action quickly. All I need to do is press the button again to go back to my previous settings. Other cameras like Sony and Canon have this feature as well, but I think the setup is slightly different. I think on Canon it's called something like recall shooting functions or something, but yeah, you might have to check that one out for yourself. But this feature is super helpful and comes highly recommended because you can get to your settings really fast if something amazing happens. So I'm trying to be really quiet here because I've just seen the egret, but below the bank there's quite a few. I'm not sure if they're ducks, can't really see from here, but I'm just trying to get a little bit closer to them without disturbing them, because I think it's quite an interesting little scene. I don't want to go any closer, I think it's moving now. Let's just stay here. Okay. So I'm rapidly losing the light right now, and I kind of feel like I haven't really got a decent image yet, which is a bit of a shame. It's the way it goes sometimes though. You spend all day looking and no time finding. Well, what an absolutely beautiful day. Even though I don't think I really captured any good photographs, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys did too. I hope you got something from the settings that I showed you, and maybe you might be able to take that into your own workflow, or maybe there's a few takeaways in there that you perhaps hadn't thought about. Anyway, I do hope they helped you in some way. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you might like the one that's at the top here too. Why not check out my ebook on landscape photography, which is linked up the top there and also down in the description. Anyway, until next week, take care. I'll see you all again very soon.